Hello y'all, this is Kaiserredux, a Hearts of Iron 4 mod that acts as an unofficial standalone expansion for the Kaiserreich mod. Kaiserreich itself is set in a world where the Central Powers won World War I. With that out of the way, this video will serve as part 1 of a Kingdom of Ukraine Khrushchev path playthrough. Here we have started, and let's go to our national overview. We're led by a Habsburg, I think, and I believe Ukraine has a special portrait switcher you can go between. Yeah, that's interesting. Just change back and forth there. Let's leave it on the king. And yeah, he is King Vasil I von Habsburg Lutheran. He is definitely, well, he's in favor, well, the current government is authoritarian democracy, and it's of the oligarchism variety. Meanwhile, as for national spirits, we have Hatman's army and issue of the Russian language. Moving on to the army, well, the military in general. Ukraine, well, the Kingdom of Ukraine has 21 divisions. 15 are infantry, 6 are cavalry. That is the army, which comes out to a total of 178,000 soldiers in the field. As for our navy, we have quite the fleet. I gotta say, 5 battleships. That's pretty good. That's pretty nice. And I wonder if it's the strongest fleet in the Black Sea. Actually, it probably isn't, because you have the Ottoman Empire to the south. But I'd say Ukraine, I'm going to assume they're second in terms of Black Sea Navy strength. And going on to the Air Force, we have 1 air wing, and it is a fighter air wing. So we have no bombers at this time, which it is what it is. And let's take our divisions here. Our 21 divisions, I believe. I'm missing a couple of them. And here we are now. So Army 1, form them up. There we go. Fantastic. And we're already there. I think one of the field marshals is also the Hatman at this time. I don't know exactly what the Hatman does government-wise. Maybe they're like head of state. They're head of government versus the head of state here. And head of state is the king. I'm not entirely certain of the arrangement there. Industry, let's get basic machine tools for our research slots. Construction 1, as well as electronic mechanical engineering. Free military factories, put more on rifles. We're making some fighters, motorized, towed artillery, good. Making a few ships, nice. And civilian factories, let's build some. Where's the infrastructure the best? Where's the optimal amount? Kiev? Build it there, yes, Kiev. Good, and what can we do in the focus tree, I wonder? Let's complete the Army Internal Structure Review. As 1936 rolls around, Hetman Pavel Spurgatsky, on behalf of King Vasil, sets out to conduct his yearly review of the Army's internal structure. A personal project of the Hetman Spurgatsky, I can't pronounce his name, but I'm just going to go on here. He has dedicated much of time and resources to grooming the developing military apparatus. So the military is being made stronger, I guess. That is right. And we're part of the Reichspakt at this time, which is a faction centered around the German Empire. We have a background event here, so I'm going to read through this. Our kingdom. The Kingdom of Ukraine proclaimed its independence with German support on 25th of January 1918, a state of affairs that was quickly ratified by the Peace of Nations Agreement at Brest-Litovsk. An initial experiment with socialism in the form of a People's Republic was swiftly expunged by a German-backed coup. This operation, led by the strongman and former general in the Russian army, Pavel Spurgatsky, he's the Hatman, I think, set the tone for Ukraine's future. It was to be a breadbasket used by a military aristocrat elite from across Eastern Europe as a source of food, a convenient market for goods, and a military bulwark against a weakened Russian Republic. For a time, the dispute between Germany and its Austro-Hungarian ally over Ukraine rumbled on after the Weltkrieg, eventually settling on a compromise whereby King Vasily and an Austrian Archduke born Wilhelm Franz von Habsburg would rule with the support of Spurgatsky, who, as the German allied, quote, Hetman, unquote, holds incredible powers of both civil and military affairs. By 1927, German involvement in the Austrian Österreich with negotiations meant that Ukraine fell de facto into the hands of the Hetman, with King Vasily becoming an increasingly marginalized figure. Ukraine, under the Hetmanate, has become the breadbasket of the Reichspakt. It made its wealthy landowners extraordinarily wealthy, but at the expense of the Ukrainian peasantry. Now, with almost 20 years after the Weltkrieg, the national situation is unstable. The Reich forces us to sell our goods almost exclusively to nations within its sphere of influence, while syndicalists gain popularity amongst the downtrodden rural poor and city workers with each passing day. Both ethnic Russians and the pro-Russian population dreams of unification with our former master to the east, while Ukrainian nationalists proclaim that our kingdom is no more than a German puppet. That is a rough situation to be in politically for this country, it seems. Split between two clashing views there, perspectives in terms of politics. Anyway, going on, this is an immutable truth. Despite these many issues afflicting us, our land is prosperous and fertile, our people industrious, and our potential boundless. And now we're going to get into an event called the Ukrainian Government. Let's read this. It is fair to say that our government is divided. While Pavel Spradotsky does his best to solve the antagonism between the army, consisting of former officers of the Russian Imperial Army and the civil administration, most of which actively support our current position in the Reichspakt, many of Ukraine's problems can only be solved when the majority of our population, the kulaks and the peasants, have an opportunity to sell their substantial agricultural produce in Europe beyond the narrow confines of the Reichspakt. We shouldn't provoke the peasants. So that's all the factions in the Kingdom of Ukraine that's been laid out there. We have nationalists who believe the monarchy is like a representation of being a puppet of Germany. We have the peasants and the urban workers who are tired of the current situation. And we have people who want to reunify with the Russian Republic in some way, which is because, well, the reason for that is because Ukraine for a long time was part of the Russian Empire in real life and before World War I in this timeline. The 1936 Riga Winter Olympics have taken place, of course, during this time in 1936. And historically speaking, from our world's perspective, Ukraine was a SSR. It was a republic within the USSR. So that's just very different situation in Kaiserredux world compared to our own there in terms of how things played out for Ukraine as a nation state and as a political entity. So what's going on? German Empire, our fortunes thus far are bound to you. If you succeed, we succeed. If you fail, we also end up being taken down with you in a way, because we're part of the Reichspakt faction. Afghanistan declared war on the Dominion of Delhi. There's the Fourth Anglo-Afghan War, the Great Berlin stock market crash. As a country heavily affiliated with the German Empire, that's not going to be well for Ukraine, I thought. So yeah, there we are. Black Monday hits Ukraine. Almost 2 weeks ago, the Berlin Stock Exchange plunged into the abyss, throwing Germany's economy into an unprecedented crisis. Now that the crash's shockwaves have reached Ukraine, German and Austrian-owned companies have closed down or laid off their workers. The Ukrainian hryvnia is losing value. I guess that's the currency of the country, and resource exports are shrinking exponentially. Let us hope that Europe remains open to us. And now we get a national spirit called Black Monday. That's not good. The economy will struggle to recover from that probably. There's an electoral gridlock in France, and the Army Internal Structure Review is done. What is this event here? Say The White Guard. The White Guard is a film based on a novel written by the leader of the pro-Russian movement, Mikhail Bulgakov. The film's story describes the life of one Russian family in Kiev just after the German occupation in 1918. The main characters are the Russian officers and Ukrainian citizens that participated in the defense of Kiev from those disloyal to the new regime of Ukrainian nationalists and different socialist groups comprised of soldiers in the army of Hetman Spradotsky. The film analyzes the relations between the Russians and the Ukrainians, conceived by Bulgakov as a symbol of national reconciliation. The White Guard, that's the name of the film, encourages the unity of the kingdom and the friendship of its people. Though some radical groups of the local nationalists consider this film to be Russian propaganda. From that event, we got some base stability, and now in the focus tree, what do we do? What do we do? I don't know. We must decide between doctrinal experimentation and Lessons of the Weltkrieg. I think I'm going to go with the second one, cause I don't know if I want to try and use tons of tanks and artillery. Yeah, let's just go with Lessons of the Weltkrieg. Just do that in our focus tree. Eventually, the left part of the focus tree will open up to us, which will be our political part of the whole tree as a whole. Once we can do all that, we'll do our future and invite Khrushchev into government, which will take 35 days. But that's still at some point. I don't know when we're going to be able to do it, but we'll be able to do it eventually. The Pope has died. There's some war declarations there over in China. That is going on. Icelandic independence. Interesting. What do I do with the military? Let's all put them on the border we share with Russia. We'll do that for now. Oh my goodness. Okay, fix this here. Move over here. That's... yeah, okay, that works for now. That's not enough divisions to defend the border as a whole. But I need to probably get some more divisions soon. Yeah, let me make a new division. Even if we're struggling a little bit with manpower at this time. I just need to grow the army. Expand the army, per se, a little bit more. Even though I want to grow it, I want to expand it more rapidly at a faster pace. It's just that we don't have the manpower at this time. And that makes a huge difference, obviously. And there's some war. Well, there's a peace treaty there. Marshal Pétain declares martial law in Algiers. I wonder who's controlling France. They had electoral gridlock. Okay, the Travailleurs, the Syndicalists are in control there. And it looks like there's a border war between the Comic Khanate and the Russian Republic. So that is going on. There's some more wars in China. Well, the Anqing versus the Shanxing Tianguo? These guys, basically. That is happening now. And the Lessons of the Weltkrieg focus is done. Fantastic. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Now, let us do implement Army Radio Service. And it says here, the Army Radio Service can easily be considered one of the pillars of future warfare. Yet the service still lacks a proper, centralized structure to make its use effective. Let us implement a centralized scheme. And that will be done soon enough. Only a 42-day long focus, so that's nice. Electronic mechanical engineering is done. Let us now do mechanical computing, since it is a 1936 era technology, and once it is done, it will grant us faster research speed, and that's always terrific to have around. And I wonder what paths our fellow Reichspakt members will take. White Ruthenia falls to syndicalism. Interesting. Very interesting. Poland falls to syndicalism. Wow, that's big. Okay, that's definitely big. That might create some problems for Germany, I'm thinking. Possibly. In Eastern Europe, perhaps. Oswald Mosley is elected chairman of the TUC. Agricultural crisis. That's concerning. That's very bad for us. Since the Weltkrieg, Ukraine has traditionally relied upon its valuable grain trade with the German Empire in order to maintain its economic security. Unfortunately, the current socio-economic issues afflicting the Reich have meant that it is now far more interested in protecting its own farmers than taking the politically unpopular move of subsidizing Ukrainian agriculture. This could be very dangerous for us, as without support from the German market, our ruling class of agrarian landowners could find it difficult to maintain their dominance in the countryside. We're still the breadbasket of Europe, right? And we get, well, now we're going to like the Germans less. We're going to get an opinion debuff on them, and we're going to lose 2 civilian factories and minus 20% base stability. They're taking the factories away. My goodness, that's serious. Use a factory in Holy War, that's a big deal. That just shows the level of severity we're at here in terms of our economical crisis. And when it's just about local insurgency, oh, that's bad. That's in Crimea. Local clashes with the Hetman's army, as well as protests against the king and the Hetman, began among the local population in Crimea, mainly Crimean Tartars, minorities who were dissatisfied with the agricultural crisis. Inflation and, in general, our policy demand bread, lower taxes, and higher wages. Despite the fact that our economy cannot afford extra expenses now, we can try to avoid further conflict and reduce taxes for Crimeans, and hope that this will calm the population. let us choose to ease the tax burden for Crimeans, and this will give us a base stability plus 5% and minus 25 political power, which isn't too bad, but it is, I don't know. The alternative to us doing that might have led to Ukraine, well, Crimea, trying to become its own independent country, which would be bad for us, as it is a very strategical location to control, and it also has a civilian factory there. Implement army radio services done. Faith and nation. Before the agricultural crisis, pro-Russian movements were rather weak and disunited, ensuring they didn't pose much of a threat to our government. This crisis has led to a shocking rise in popular support for these organizations, and an increase in their willingness to cooperate. Yesterday, a famous Russian writer from Kiev, Mikhail Bulgakov, is at the White Guard film guy, I guess he is, proclaimed the unification of the three largest movements into a singular organization known as Faith and Nation, or just VIN, supported by the Ukrainian Church, itself heavily influenced by the Moscow Patriarchate. Anyway, the population of southern and eastern Ukraine and many high-ranking officers. This population could provoke serious instability in some parts of our country. We really must protest. So I think we lost some base stability there, and it's looking pretty more and more unstable in the Kingdom of Ukraine as it deals with the effects of Black Monday and such. But with that said, I think I'm going to end what is part 1 of my Kingdom of Ukraine Khrushchev path playthrough in the Hearts of Iron 4 mod Kaiserredux here. If you enjoyed the mod, you can check it out in the video description, a link to it is there. If you enjoyed the video itself, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.